Good evening. We'll start in another 5 minutes. Hi, Laya. I hope you can hear me clearly and my screen is visible. Okay, that's great. We are a little early, so we'll start in 5 minutes. Good evening again. Shall we start? I can see 14 people in the room. There's Bushra, Datta, Devjit, Dipanjan, Laya, Mrinalini, Maithili, Nandkumar, Radhika, Sudhanva, Vrinda, Yogesh, and Yovan. Can all of you hear me clearly? Okay, great. I'm going to speak at this volume because my throat is a bit sore. Sorry about that, but I hope you can hear me. Yeah, just a little bit. But if you're able to hear me clearly, I think that should be fine. I can conduct the webinar at this volume. I'm sitting in a very quiet place. Is that okay, everyone? Okay, great. Thank you and welcome to session 7 of email marketing. Today, we are going to talk about something very, very important for email marketers, and that's database. This is our agenda for today. We'll talk about various aspects of database and how database you already know is more than just a list of email addresses. Today, we'll look at how it can actually be used as a roadmap for email strategy, managing the customer's journey through your emails. So here's something interesting. Now, I think all of you, having gone through 6 sessions so far, already know why email marketing is not just picking up one large list of email addresses and bombarding them with emails. You know all the issues that can happen with that. Your emails could bounce, there would be delivery issues. You need to really understand your customers so your emails can be relevant. Last week, I showed you a demonstration of MailChimp. Incidentally, when I was demonstrating MailChimp, I told you that automation is a paid feature. As of today, MailChimp has sent out an email to all its users saying that automation is now available free for all users. So you will want to check that out. Exactly. That email has just come only today. I've not had a chance to check it yet, but I think this is excellent news because automation can just take your content, your email plan to the next level altogether. So be sure to check the automation feature on MailChimp as well. After today's session, especially, I think it'll make a lot more sense to you how you can use database to really program those automated emails. So, quick recap, remember this email marketing is not bulk mailing, it's not mass mailers, it's not cold calling, it's not sending out advertisements on email, it is definitely not spamming. Spamming is a bad word for email marketers. This is a definition I gave you in the orientation, and I know at that time it was very jargony. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to read through it and see if it makes a lot more sense now. So, email marketing is about using email to establish a conversation, which is two-way, build loyalty, which means your readers will keep coming back, and nurture engaged readers into prospects. So, take them from just being readers into people who are actively engaged with you and possibly want to buy your products or services. Is this making sense? Everyone with me so far? Okay. So let's look at the last piece in this puzzle. I also mentioned this last week. Lead nurturing is developing relationships with customers at every stage in the sales funnel. In session 6, we looked at different emails and how every little detail, right from the kind of call to action to the frequency of the emails, the responsiveness of emails, automated emails, all of these are an attempt to address customers' very specific and individual needs at whatever point they are in the sales funnel. I hope everyone knows what the sales funnel is. The sales funnel is nothing but a step by step journey that the customer is taking along with the brand or the marketer. Okay. Now, here's a graph, here's a chart that I find very, very useful. This is there in your notes as well. We're going to go through this step by step. This is one version of the sales funnel, and this represents the interaction between the customers and the brand. Okay, someone just unmuted themselves. I'm going to mute all of you again. Quick request, don't do that because the connection might destabilize. Okay. So this is the interaction between the people. I'm just going to call them people because they are not yet customers until they buy. And the brand. So this is the brand, and these are all the stages that the people pass through. So it starts off when they are not in the market, which means they do not know of your existence, and you don't know a lot about them either as the brand. So your job as the brand at that point is to reach out to potentials and generate demand, which means that, remember permission marketing? It means you really, really need to spend time thinking about who is the ideal audience for your company's services or products, who is already interested. Why try to force people to buy ice water when you can just think of people who are already thirsty or people who are in the desert, right? Remember that example? So that is the brand's role at this point. Try and understand who are these people and what is the best way to reach out to them. If you reach them with communication that is suited best for this stage, and these are the digital marketing technologies that are best suited. So there's industrial directories. Public relations is a great way to start an impression, create an impression. There is display advertising. Those of you who've already gone through this session will know what this means. But display ads, even if you haven't, don't worry about it. Display ads are nothing but those ads that you see on websites which catch your attention. There's also social media, because social media is a lovely way to start conversations with absolute strangers and it's perfectly appropriate. If you do a good job here, this audience base now knows of your existence, and those of them who are interested are going to want to know more about you. What is the first thing that you do when you want to find out more? As a digitally empowered person, as a digital native, what is the first thing that you do when you want to know more about something? What do we all do? We go online and look for it. We do a Google search, right? Which means you, as the brand, need to be present when the potential customer comes looking for you, which is why search engine optimization is right there at the top of the pyramid here for this stage. PPC is mentioned here. PPC stands for pay per click. This is actually part of display advertising. The only reason these are mentioned in two different ways is these are the ads that catch your attention to build visibility. When a person clicks on the ad, they are taken to a landing page, which could be a Facebook page, or website, and so on and so forth. And the kind of people who will click on an ad are who? People who want to know more, right? So PPC at this stage, those ads and those audiences that come via those clicks, you're getting their attention and you're giving them information that they're looking for. There's advertising, all other forms of advertising on digital, social media, and industrial directories. Now, what happens when you've gotten the audience to come to one of your properties, your digital properties like Facebook or a website or your Twitter account or any one of those? Now, it's your job to try and engage them further, right? At that stage, can you maybe give them a form to fill? Can you give them maybe tell them about your newsletter, ask them to subscribe? All of those are possible, right? Yes, no? Is everyone with me so far? Very importantly, this is the stage where you can get permission from them because you know they've come looking for you. So you're providing them with the information they need at this stage. And once you get permission, those of them who have given you permission to contact them are people who are seriously considering you. They are not just idly researching you. They are now in a stage where they're seriously considering you and they're going to be comparing you with whatever else they have, your competitors, and so on and so forth, which means their information need is what? They need you to explain why you are better than the others. You shouldn't start over here by proving that you're better than the others because that's going to come as hard sell. But at this stage, this is not where you start introducing yourself because they already know of your existence. This is where you prove that you are better than everyone else and whatever else they compare you with. And this is where email marketing comes in because by this stage, you now have permission. Lead nurturing, I've already given you the definition. Lead nurturing is spread across different digital technologies. It means really listening to what your customers need and want and give it to them at that stage. We'll look at how you can use database to manage lead nurturing today. Display advertising and content marketing go hand in hand with all this. In fact, email marketing, some people think it's part of content marketing, some people think it's a very good ally with content marketing. I'm not going to argue that. All of these technologies only help you as the marketer. If you do a good job here, then the customer is going to say, done, I'm going to pay. I'm ready for the transaction, which is the procurement stage. And last week, we've already looked at how the procurement stage or the transactions are also great ways to continue your marketing efforts. What happens beyond that transaction? You either win that transaction, which means the customer has bought you, or you lose it, which means they've decided to go and buy someone else. Either way, given the effort you have taken to bring them till this stage, you don't let them go. Remember, all of digital marketing, not just email, all of digital marketing is a long running game, which means that you need to think beyond one transaction. I hope it's a lot clearer now why I keep telling you don't just think in terms of this email will get me sales. Think of the longer relationship you're building with the customer. If you're not pushy, if you don't turn them off, then you might have sales coming to them for the rest of their lives. And that is what the beyond bit is about. So there's email marketing here. You'll notice marketing automation falls in here. Is this making sense now that you know what all these terms mean? How many people here know what remarketing is? That's great, Kuresh. Okay. Very quickly, for those of you who don't know, remarketing will get covered in your other CDMM sessions. But remarketing basically is you're using information that you're collecting about customers from one digital technology to make your other digital efforts make sense, work better. Simple example, when you're on a e-commerce site like Amazon or Flipkart or one of those, let's say you've put something into your cart or even into your wish list, and then let's say you shut the store, Amazon.com, you shut it and you go onto Facebook. You'll notice in the sidebar there's an ad for Amazon, and it'll show you the same product that you were looking at. You might shut it and go on to some other website. Then you'll see a digital display ad, which again has the same product that you had put into your wish list. Everyone seen that? All of this is remarketing. That ad is sort of chasing you wherever you're going on the internet. How does that happen? Because when you are on Amazon, Amazon has collected information about what your preferences are. And this information, they are using it to tailor the ads that you look at wherever else you go on the internet. Make sense? It's actually really simple when you think about it, right? Yeah, that's the technology bit of it. I won't delve into that because you have other instructors who will explain exactly how that happens. But strategically speaking, I hope you can all understand how that's happening. Similarly, if you've ever used a trip site like Make My Trip, TripAdvisor, any one of those, you might find right when you're searching for, let's say, trips to Goa, at that very moment you get an email from some hotel in Goa offering you discounts. That's happening because the website is collecting information about your interests and it's triggering off an automated email about discounts that are relevant to you. Make sense? Yes or no? Something that all of you should keep in mind is that email marketing does not stand alone. Neither does social media marketing, neither does display advertising, marketing, none of these. They're all they're all tools in one toolkit called digital marketing. All of these technologies feed into each other, and you need to make a digital marketing plan, not just an email marketing plan, or not just a social media plan, not just a PR plan. All of these technologies are all different ways for you to get what you need, and they all should work together. Otherwise, not only is it a waste of your time and money, if you're, let's say you have a social media plan and you have an email marketing plan and they contradict each other, you're going to cause confusion among your customers and you're going to look very bad as a brand. So please make sure you're integrating all these. That's why your CDMM module is giving you an insight into all these technologies together. So let's come back into permission marketing. Who can quickly give me the definition of permission marketing? What do we remember of permission marketing? Yes, and more than that, it's not just about getting permission, but keep it going. Let's see. So, permission marketing is, yes, absolutely, that's the start of it. You get permission to contact customers, but also you're approaching customers with their needs. You're approaching people who are actively interested in you and your products and services. Making sense? So it's not just about getting people's permission. Let's say you have signed up for a website, you're interested in something. Does that mean it's okay for that marketer to bombard you with newsletters, discounts, promotions, offers, test drives, calls? That's not okay, right? Because you are a human being. You're not just one number or one email address or one name in their database. Marketers who treat their customers simply like statistics lose out very, very quickly. Permission marketing relies on treating your customers like human beings. Think about what human beings want and need. You may have a database of 50,000 people. Each of these 50,000 people is different and unique. Their needs differ, right? Just the 15 people in this session right now, 20 people in this session, including me, all of us have different needs, right? We come from different backgrounds. We are sitting in different parts of the planet. We have different approaches towards life. We have different interests. So the way we see our brands and products also differs. Each of us has a different viewpoint on food, for instance, something so universal. A marketer who understands this need can go very, very far with their marketing initiatives. So, start off by mapping the customer's journey. A strategy is only as good as the plan that you make beforehand. We have now gone into the realm of email strategy, business strategy. And strategy is not about we'll just land up, we'll just collect addresses and then we will see देखा जाएगा क्या करेंगे. We'll just keep bombarding them and whatever hits. That's not strategy. That's a spammer. That's a lottery ticket. A strategy works by thinking about what we know already and how we can approach the customer best. So, here's a suggestion through today's session. Think about your own company or your own brand. Does everyone here have a brand or a company they represent? You can take 10 seconds if you want to think about it. Everybody? Yeah? So, I'm going to run you through a list of questions. You don't need to answer it to me because we can't really do that for 20 different companies. What you can do is ask yourselves these because this is what will help you build your strategy. Who do you want to reach out to? At what stage in that cycle that I showed you are they? Do they know of your existence? Are they very, very evolved customers who know everything there is to know about your industry? So you only need to reach them with a product and price? Or are you a product like a retailer where most people don't know of your existence or what you do? They don't even know the problem you're addressing. This should also tell you how often you reach out to them. Don't do this retroactively, that is saying, I've been sending out 5 emails and no one is responding, so I have to send 10 emails this month. That's a very bad way to do it. That's a very reactive way of doing it. Business strategy is about planning beforehand. If you are a dental clinic, you don't need to message people every 3 days. People don't want to be reminded of their teeth problems every 3 days. On the other hand, if you are in the business of entertainment, people do want to be reminded about what are the latest movies every week. So understand what your customer likes. Don't only think about, I need to get my targets. Think about what is it that you need to say to them. Do you need to educate them on your industry or do you need to maximize that little attention that they're giving you by saying something very different, maybe highlighting one particular benefit that they didn't know about? Remember the Grammarly email? You're missing out the best part of Grammarly. So, what is your communication to be? What is it that you want them to do next? Break down your entire strategy into step by step and use that schematic that I've just explained to you. That's there in your notes. Use it, keep refining it, and keep going back to it at every stage, every month, maybe every week, even to see, okay, the customers are at the stage where they now know of my existence and they're looking for information. Can I address their information in other ways? Can I remind them that, okay, you asked this question and I've given you the answer? Is there anything more I can help you with? Is there anything that's standing in your way? What is it that you need them to do next? Because when they receive that information, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to seriously start considering you. If they're still stuck at that stage of, I am still looking for information, what is stopping them? Have you not given them enough information? Are they not understanding the information you've given them? Have they not seen it? What do you need them to do? And what can you do so that they take that next action? What are your alternate plans? Anyone who makes any kind of plan or strategy will tell you a plan is only as good as all the buffers you build in and any alternate plans that you make. Keep in mind that this is human behavior. Human beings will never do exactly what you expect them to do. So, what are you going to do if you've created a newsletter and no one wants to subscribe? You cannot force people to receive it. Go back and evaluate. Maybe your newsletter is not that interesting, or maybe your audience does not like reading newsletters. Maybe they're not as conversant in English, or maybe they're not that digitally savvy. Maybe they don't like reading. Maybe they will respond better to videos. Think about that. Keep yourself flexible at all points of time. Especially with digital, the way to do it is start with a plan and keep going back and refining as you keep rolling it out. Make sense? So, this is a broad overview of how you get started with your strategy. Let's think about database now for a minute. There are two terms that describe how a database is constructed. You would have heard me using these terms already, but just for the sake of getting it completely clear, a database is comprised of two things only. Any database anywhere in the world. It's a database looks something like this. This is a screenshot from a very, very simple database. So, firstly, a database contains fields. Every field is a type of information. So, you can see there's first name, last name, date of birth, gender, location, join date, permission level, email address. Remember in my MailChimp demo, I designed a form. Every single question in that form went on to become a field. Can you see that? And every entry into the field, that is every human being who gets added, whose information gets added, becomes a record. So all databases are comprised of records and fields. Any questions so far? I keep bringing up the chat window. I've minimized it so that I can make the screen full. I keep pulling up the chat window to see that you're all with me. So every database is comprised of records and fields. Think about what are the kind of fields that you want in your database. Because a database is a picture of the customer. Does everyone remember I showed you how to segment a database? I did not segment it because I wanted all of you to receive an email, but I showed you how you can segment it, right? That segmentation is only possible based on information, based on fields that I already have. If I want to segment a database on Delhi users versus Mumbai users, I need to have captured which city my recipients stay in. If I want to segment it by hobbies, I need to have captured that information. So I cannot start my email program and then 2 months later decide, oh, I'm going to segment it based on people with children and then discover that my database does not have that data, right? That's logical. So when I am creating my database, let me think about what are the pieces of information I'm going to need, not just today for the first email, but for all subsequent emails. These are some of the things that can help you decide what kind of emails will be relevant, right? Can you think of anything else that will help you send more relevant emails other than the things on the slide? Hey guys, did you think today was going to be like the first session where I just keep talking? You are now at the second last session. You're going to be building strategies on your own. Okay, Pankaj, that's great. Gender definitely helps. Thank you, Datta. Location also. Gender and location incidentally come in under demographics. What else? Date of birth, yes. Okay, So here's a question. Would you want to capture both date of birth and age? If you could capture only one, which one would it be better to capture? Which one would be better? Date of birth, right? Why age? Even then, if you capture people's age, and it'll keep getting populated over time. 10 years later, when you look at the database, all of those will stand at the same age, and you have no way of knowing whether reader number one entered their age last year as 27, that means they're 28, while reader number two entered their age as 27 10 years ago, that means they're 37. Isn't database date of birth much better? Okay, don't say okay. Think about whether what I'm saying is making sense. You don't have to accept what I'm saying. I want you to think whether it's making sense because you're going to be doing this on your own. Is that making sense? Right? Because your database is not one thing that it's not going to be like that email marketing class, like the MailChimp class where I tell you all, fill in the form right now. Your customers will fill in the form as and when. And you might need the age for other things, Kuresh. If you are marketing, let's say you're marketing mobile phones, when you market it to 50-year-old housewives, it'll be very different from when you're marketing it to 16-year-old college students. Yes or no? And that information you will get only from birthdays. This is not just about they're my friends, so I want to wish them on birthdays. The birthday wishes are definitely a way to engage with the customer and make them like you better. Yeah? So keeping this in mind, let's think about how we can plan our database. This is even before we start plotting the database, okay? Filling the database. Remember when I was creating the form, the entire process I went through saying, okay, this will be useful to capture, this will be useful to capture. So your database is like one huge building that will really help you. And at this point, you're being the architect and you are drawing up the blueprint of the building before you construct it. So plan your database. Start with what data do you already have. By the time it's time for your email marketing program, you noticed email marketing was number three. It wasn't at the very start because email marketing is not for cold calling, right? That means you already have some data about your potential recipients. What kind of data are you likely to have at that stage? You definitely have their permission, right, to mail them, otherwise, you can't mail them. This means that you probably also have their contact information. Can you think of other things that you might have before you start? What did I already know about all of you before I asked you to fill in the form? I knew your names. Very good, Maithili. See, this is an example. So think about similarly what you know about your audiences. I did not have your contact info, Chinky. But oh, okay, unless you're saying that Digital Vidya has it, so I could have gotten it from them. Okay, fair enough, maybe. Anything else? I also knew that all of you are digital marketing students. How would I have people's professional details, Mrinalini? Okay, so gender to an extent. So here's the thing data is hard facts. Data is not what I think it might be. That's not data, that is imagination. Data is only data when it is validated. Oh, I see, Mrinalini. Okay. So you're saying as a representative of Digital Vidya, I would have had access. Fair enough. Completely fair. So Mrinalini says that Digital Vidya asked all of you to fill in your professional details when you joined, which means DV has all that data already. Very good. Excellent. Is this making sense? These are all your sources of information even before you. So asking your customers to fill in forms is not the only way by which you can get data. Think of data as currency. On the internet, data is currency. The more you have, the richer you have, the richer you are. What can you interpret from it? Let's circle back to the date of birth and age question. If you have a person's age, you cannot interpret their date of birth from it. But if you have their date of birth, you can interpret age from it. If you have a person's, let's say, home address, what can you interpret from it? Location or zone, absolutely. If you have a person's employer and designation, what can you interpret from it? Yeah, that's what I mean by employer, the company that employs them. If you know which company they are employed in. Even before interested field, you know which field they work in, right? You might be able to assess income. Income is not that easily available, Kuresh. Can you tell what a 25-year-old market social media manager is earning? No, but you know that if they work in social media, then they are in the digital space. They are digitally. Kuresh, I just said right now there's no guessing in this. Data is only hard facts. No, I'm not going to discuss that right now, Pankaj. We are not doing a job search discussion. We are not going to go with guesses. Guesses are for later. At this stage, we are only looking at hard data. See, the more guesses you bring in, the more mistakes you're adding, the more chances you're taking. This is not a lottery. A plan means you're going to get as much completely sure as possible. I've taken you through the various facets so you know that email marketing, digital marketing also involves a lot of money and effort. You're not going to go with guesses or I think maybe it'll be like this, right? You want to be as sure as possible. It's a hard nosed business decision. What do you need in order to move on to the next step? So, all this is data that you already have. What more data do you need about your potential customers to be able to give them a good offering in your emails? These are the things that you put into your sign up form, these are the things that you ask in your surveys. Okay, so interest is very generic. What do you mean by interest? If someone asked you, what are you interested? Hobbies is good. Do all of you remember that I did not include any open-ended questions in the form? I gave you a drop down, right? Which means you could only select from what I had given. You know why that is the case? Now that day I had 14 people in the class. 14 I could always go through and read every single answer. What are you going to do if you have 50,000 people who filled in your form? Are you going to be able to sit and read every single one and then interpret it? One person will say, I like books. One person will say, I like reading. One person will say, I enjoy reading books. And each of those answers will look different. It's a lot of effort, right? So be very precise in wording your questions because then you will get precise answers which are easier for you to manage. Where are you going to import the data from, Devjit? You can only import data that you already have, right? Data is not easily available, it's not floating around. What new data can you get from each step? If you ask people to sign up for your website using their LinkedIn account, what information do you have? Absolutely. If you ask people to sign in using their Facebook account, you may not have access to their contacts, Pankaj. Every time you install an app, you have to read through the terms and conditions, right? Every single app that you install tells you that this app reserves the right to access these information. Why are they doing that? Because they're telling you that now they will make use of this information for their marketing purposes. That's data. That's how you get data. And it's with your permission. Yes or no? What are your sources of new data? If people have entered their, let's say, their Twitter handle, can you go and follow them and see what are the things they tweet about? It'll help you understand them better. These are some other very useful sources of data about your customers. If you have a business development team, or if you have a, let's say, a salesperson or a sales team, speak to them, interview them, because these are people who walk around with a ton of very useful information about your customers. Anyone who speaks to the customer directly, including a call center or even a receptionist, they have a very good sense of what your customers needs are, which they may not even realize is very, very useful. Another thing that you should think about is what is the kind of content people consume. If I tell you about two people who are 40 years old, two men who are 40 years old men, you don't know that much about them. But if I tell you one of them, so person one really loves watching videos by The Viral Fever on YouTube. Person 2 enjoys reading Shakespeare's works. Do you understand the two people a little differently now? A little better? These are two very different people, right? They're both 40 years old and they're both men, but you can now target each one a little differently. Let's come to populating the database. Now you've gotten your fields in place, you're going to populate it. What are the three ways I told you to populate a database? There are three ways by which you can populate a database, right? What are these three ways? I told you this during the MailChimp demo. People, please revise the videos, it'll help you. So, method number one is importing existing data. If you already have a database, import. Method number two is get people to sign up, so fill in their own information. Very good, Devjit, absolutely. And method number three is to update, either manually update it or update existing information. All of you have smartphones, right? I'm sure there are a lot of Android users as well in the class. When you start to type in, let's say I'm your friend and I tell you, I'm working for a new company now and here's my landline phone number. When you start to enter my details, what does your phone ask you? It asks you whether to create it as a new contact or update an existing contact, right? Because I'm in your phone, I'm your friend, my details will already be in your phone. So what you will say is update the existing contact. Yes or no? This is a database action. Especially if you're using an Android phone, your personal database includes whatever you're capturing through your email address. So you have all the email addresses, everyone you're mailing, and you also have all the phone numbers that you're capturing through your mobile phone, and all of that goes into one single database. Making sense? So that's your new channels as well. Quick recap of permission marketing. We know what permission marketing is. It's approaching people who are already interested or likely to be interested and getting their permission, seeking their permission to contact them, working with them rather than trying to force your message onto everyone. Think about the data that you have in your database. Keep in mind that data has a shelf life. Also, data is a living creature, which means that data gets outdated, data gets errors coming in. What will happen if you make a mistake in typing up a person's email address into your database? What will happen if you enter my phone number wrongly into your phone? And that's right, Devjit and Yuvan, if you enter email addresses wrongly, those emails will bounce, right? So keep your database clean. Confirm whoever is active in your database. Remember, if people are not active in their email addresses, what's going to happen? Their mailboxes will fill up, which means again your mails will bounce. How can you confirm this? You can't do this for a fact, but one of the many things that digital marketers do is When you sign up for something, they send you an email with a link that you're supposed to click on. Only if you click the link are you taken to the next step. Why do they do that? Because this way they know that you are active in that email inbox. You've not just randomly given them some email address. That making sense? There are a lot of office buildings that require you to leave your phone number at the entry. And a lot of people used to put fake phone numbers there. But some of the bigger offices, their security systems now, when you give the receptionist your phone number, their system will send you an SMS. And you have to give them the password in that SMS. This way, they are confirming that you're giving them a valid phone number. It's the same principle. So remember MailChimp also, the subscription form, they wanted to make sure that you're not giving some nonsense email address or an email address that you don't check anymore. That's why they made you go into your mailbox and verify. Remind the inactive. If you have a different way in which you're approaching people, let's say people are already in your database and the last few emails you send them have not been read. How can you check whether people are reading your emails or not? You know this already. Absolutely. Open rate and click rate. Very good. You can remind them if you have a different contact for them, you can call them or mail them at the other contact saying, just wanted to check. Because this is something that will only keep your bounce rate clean, your delivery rates clean and good. A company that I did some work with actually used to do this. Every month, they would send out an email to the people who had not opened their last 5 emails and say, we noticed that you haven't been opening our last few emails. We do not wish to spam you. If you do not respond to this email with a yes, we will not continue to send you emails on this. You can subscribe back to our newsletter anytime you like over here. I thought that was a very, very proactive and good initiative because there is no benefit in bombarding them with emails. They are anyway not opening it. It means your open rates and click rates are going to lower, and at some point of time, your delivery rate will also go down because the emails will start bouncing. Or you may have gotten marked as spam, which will also hurt your delivery rate. Separate the people who are unresponsive. I'll never tell you to delete data because, like I said, data is currency. You may have a torn 5 rupee note, you're not going to throw it away, right? You'll have to figure out what to do with it. With a 5 rupee note, you can take it to the bank and exchange it. With data that doesn't seem to be responsive, you'll have to figure out what you can do with it. But don't throw it away because data is very expensive and very, very valuable. Correct any errors that you are making. Definitely keep a check on your bounce rate. I told you in the deliverability session that about bounce handlers. Everyone remembers that? And I've also shown you in MailChimp how you can keep checking your bounce rates. The bounce report will even tell you which are the email addresses that have bounced. And as you go on, MailChimp will actually give a rating in your database, that star rating, to show you which customers are more responsive and which are not. So keep a track of it and see if some email address is bouncing a lot. Maybe there's an error in that. So keep track of that. Keep your database clean. Merge any repetitions. If the same person's email address is occurring twice, they will receive 2 emails for every campaign you send out, which will irritate them. So don't have repetitions in your database. And finally, you're ready to use your database as a strategic tool. Everybody with me so far? Okay, before we go ahead, I'm going to give you a video to watch. Please watch this 2-minute video and come back and tell me when you're done. I'm going to give you the URL. No, they don't. They don't automatically delete anything. If you have the same email address registered as 3 different records, MailChimp might give you an error warning, but they won't delete anything. They won't touch anything in your database. At most, they might block your account from sending. Please watch the video and come back and tell me when you're done. I'm going to mute myself in the meantime. No liar. Try doing it and see. They don't delete anything without your permission. Okay, is that everyone? We're all done? Okay. This is the level of attention and effort you should put in for every single email campaign you send out. Now, keep in mind that this is not a broadcast. It's email, which means it's deeply personal. You may have 50,000 people in your database, but for each of them, each one is an individual, and they are receiving your email in a medium as personal as their mobile phone or their computer, which means they need to be made to feel special. They should not feel like I was just standing in the park and someone was shouting. I'm just one random person in the crowd. You can only build relationships with people by being really personal and one on one. We talked about personalization already. Here's how database can help you personalize your emails even better. Remember this? Oops, sorry. People's needs differ. And also, the two examples I gave you were of Vodafone and the retainer product. In that case, the audiences in general in both cases were uniform. But realistically, for most products and services, you'll have some people who know a lot about your product, some people who know nothing about your product, some people who are very engaged, some people who are not that engaged, and so on and so forth. Take a product like a mobile phone, for instance. Mobile phones are used by everyone from children to really elderly people as well. I'm sure all of us have a much older relative who struggles with using a smartphone, right? Maybe our parents or grandparents, uncles, aunts. They don't quite get all the different things. And we ourselves also sometimes are intimidated by people younger than us, teenagers who do all these things really, really quickly. That means for the mobile phone manufacturer, their audiences are very, very different. They come with different needs and they know different things. So, that graph that I showed you at the start, that chart of where the customers are, your 50,000 people may be at 50,000 different places and different journeys. How do you then plan out what emails to send them, who to send what to, and when? This is where database can help you. Your database, let's assume, has 50,000 people, just as one number. You can do something called segmentation. Is anyone here already familiar with the concept of segmentation, targeting, and positioning? It's a marketing model. Okay, for those of you now, I'm going to do the very basics of this only. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I think this will make sense to you. Hopefully, it should make sense for the others as well. Segmentation is the first step, and segmentation is really quite simple. Segmentation just means that you're breaking up a larger group into smaller segments and addressing each segment individually. Does that make sense? Let's look at how you can segment your database. You can use a model called biopersona. Biopersona is a construct that's used across marketing, not just in email marketing. So, what is biopersona? Biopersona is a semi fictional representation of your ideal customer, and it's based on industry wisdom. So, what do you already know about your ideal customer based on because you've been in the industry? What are some known facts, maybe based on research or many, many years of consumer patterns, consumer behavior, and guesstimates about customers? I know I told Kuresh and a bunch of you that you don't do guesswork. That is when it comes to database. But now we are moving beyond the realms of data into some level of guessing, but it's not a blind guess, it's a guesstimate, which means it's an estimate that you're partly guessing. So, what is a biopersona? A biopersona is an is a thinking model, is a thinking tool where you are mapping out. So, you're going to divide your database into different segments, and each segment will be represented by one biopersona. So let's say your database of 50,000 people, you're dividing them into one segment of 10,000 people, one segment of 20,000 people, one segment of 50,000 people, 15,000 people, one segment of 2,000 people, and one segment of 3,000 people. Wait, does that make 50? 30, 45, 50. So different groups, each of these groups. So let's take the smallest group, which is 2,000 people. That group of 2,000 people will have something in common, which is why you've separated them into a group, a segment. Okay. Your bio persona will be a representation of those 2,000 people. Am I making sense? So, your bio persona, you're going to create this as if it is a person, a fictitious person. You are going to build their personality based on what you already know. So, these 2,000 people, why have you segregated them? What do they have in common? You're going to build one representation that personifies these 2,000 people. Let's look at some things that you're going to populate your bio persona with. Demographic information. So, is your bio persona male or female? Do they live in a metro or a tier 2 city? Which city? What age are they? Keep in mind that these are not age bands. No human being is 25 to 40 years old. 25 to 40 is a very broad range. you're not describing your segment. You are creating one representation of that entire segment. I hope that's clear. Is anyone confused so far? The more detail you build into your buyer persona, the better it is for you. I'll explain what buyer persona does in a minute. Before that, let's populate the buyer persona. Are they extroverts? Are they introverts? Do they have large circles of friends? Do they tend to be very quiet and shy? Do they spend a lot of time on the phone? Do they spend a lot of time connected to the internet? Do they use a lot of apps? Do they read a lot? What do they want in life? And keep in mind that this does not have to relate to your product directly. At this stage, you need to be thinking of your audience as human beings. One mistake that marketers make is to assume that people are only with regard to their own brand and product. So when I say life goal, Pankaj, what is your life goal? Pankaj, Mrinalini, what are your life goals? So Pankaj's life goal is to start a business. If I were to say Pankaj's life goal is to learn from digital Vidya, it would be very disrespectful on my part of Pankaj, right? And also, it really limits my understanding of Pankaj. If I only think of Pankaj in terms of what he can buy from Digital Vidya. Yes or no? Guys, are we very sleepy? Stretch break चाहिए? Stretch break. Okay, great. Definitely think about what are their challenges to using my product because that can help me overcome those challenges better. What are their communication preferences? So let's have a quick little activity, shall we? I'm going to give you two buyer personae. These are visual buyer personae. I'm not going to tell you anything more about them. Can everyone see these two pictures clearly? So these two buyer personae, each one represents a different segment in my database. I have two messages about the same product. Message one is how cool it makes you look among your friends. Message two is how efficient it is and how much time it helps you save. I want you to tell me which message you will send to buyer persona A, that is the one on the left, which one you'll send to buyer persona B, that's the one on the right, and why. No, don't say one or two. I want to know which one to whom and why. Take a minute, don't jump in with the answer. You can take a minute. Take a minute, don't jump in with the answer. Guys, please give it to me in one message so I can keep track. I want you to tell me which message to A and why. You can take a minute to do this and type in your answers in the chat window. That's great, Radhika. Makes sense. Radhika says message 2 to A because she seems to be working in a medical related field, doctor, where time and efficiency very important. Bushra, my message had nothing to do with health consciousness. Pankaj, you'll need to explain why. Same Rinalni, Yuvan, all of you, you need to explain why. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm trying to understand how you're thinking. You need to explain why. Okay, Ankit has a thought process. He says 1 to A as women want to be ahead among their friends. Fair enough. No right or wrong answer, as long as you have some kind of an idea behind why you're doing that. I'll take one more answer before I go on to the next slide. Anybody has a thought they want to share? Sudanva says message one to B as it's about looking cool and he seems to sport a different look, whereas same dress every day considering regarding the clothes. Okay, Sudanva, that's fair. I think Pankaj is saying something similar about doctors wearing the same uniform. Yovan is looking at their body language, which is also great. That's also data that you have. And Devjit has also looked at the body language, and so has Maithili. Very good. Excellent. So, all of you, can you see what you've done here? These are guesstimates. It's not completely a random shot in the dark. You're looking at some data points that you are receiving, and based on that, some kind of an estimated guess you're making. Making sense? Let's delve deeper into biopersona. This is a very, very broad, simple biopersona. Here's another one, and these are four different biopersonae for four different segments in the database. And this one has a picture as well as a word cloud around each one. Each biopersona has also been given a name and a designation. Top left is Mario, the studio consultant. It says manager, self reliant, savvy, expert, creative, advanced, smart, problem solver, marketing. Top right is Eliza, the PR manager. Advanced, smart, aspires, social, educated, office, inefficient, busy. Bottom right is Andre, the developer. Techie aggregator, educated, savvy, mobile, profiteer, startup, self serving. Bottom left is Ada, the receptionist. Stationary, self reliant, diligent, resourceful, self serving, greeting, smart, busy, and front desk. I could create a communication which is about efficiency, and I think Ada and Andre, the segments that they represent, would both respond very well to it. Whereas Eliza and Mario may not respond so well to it. Can you see that? On the other hand, if I have a communication which is about the technical benefits, only Andre's segment will respond best to it. If I have something about the amazing photographs that this mobile phone takes, Mario might respond well because he's a studio consultant. Eliza might respond well. She's a PR manager, so very social. So, different segments, different biopersona. The biopersona becomes your reference point for the communication you're creating. Keep in mind that communication is better the more specific it is. Generic communication does not do well. Biopersona is a model that allows you to make your communication very specific to your different audience groups. These are some of the many differences you can bring in, not just in the message, so that's context, but you could change the frequency. So let's say your product is a mobile phone. I would imagine someone like Andre would be very, very up to date on technology. You just need to send him one message on it. If you bombard him every 3 days, he might consider you spam. On the other hand, someone like Eliza is inefficient. You will need to keep bombarding her with a message for her to take notice. Can you see that? Similarly, the timing. So, what time of the day and week are you going to mail them? Someone like Mario might be more responsive to emails that he sees at 6 in the evening when he's getting out of work. Someone like Andre might be awake at 3 in the morning checking his emails while things are downloading or things are running. Someone like Ada might choose to check her email at 9 in the morning when she comes into work. And someone like Eliza might check her email at different points in the day, notably during lunchtime or during her breaks. So biopersona also helps you segregate and make separate email marketing plans for different segments in your database. Think about the professional universe around your audiences. Not only what industry they are in, what kind of company do they work for. If I tell you about two 25-year-old women in Mumbai, that tells you a little bit about them. But if I tell you that one of them works for Facebook as IT administrator and one of them works for State Bank of Mysore as cashier, did you get a very different people of these two? What you will say to these two will be very different. How often you say it, how you say it will be very different, right? They work for very different industries, very different kinds of companies, and in very, very different role. The lady who works for Facebook will probably be a lot more tech savvy and also able to check her emails and messages very often through the day. Whereas someone who works as a cashier in a bank, and that to a nationalized bank, not an ICICI or an MNC bank, is likely to have very set timings during which she checks her computer or her mobile phone and her personal email, right? Here's a detailed bio persona. I'm not going to read out the whole thing. Later on, when you watch the video, you can read it. But this one has been titled Socially Competitive Samantha. The name is Samantha, gender female, age 28, education bachelor's degree. There's even one representative photo here. Occupation marketing, earning this much money. Status is single, Boston. Location is Boston, Massachusetts. Among other things, I'm going to quickly scan through, not read everything. Criteria for selecting games is free to download and play. Ability to compete against friends. Strategic thinking needed, but not a time sink. So easy to play, advance, and pick up backups. Frustration with games is cost to download, too hard to advance when friends become unresponsive. Why is there so much about gaming? Because this is a bio persona for a gaming company called Indie Game Girl. It even contains a little quote by Samantha or people like Samantha, which says, I get so competitive when I play Bejeweled against my friends at work. I spend way too much money just so I can win. Of course, I don't tell my friends I spend anything. I like them thinking I'm naturally gifted. SpongeBob Dinner Rush is super addictive. When I have a few minutes to kill, I'm waiting in line for coffee in the morning. I try to beat a couple of levels. Can you see how this is a very, very rich understanding about the kind of customer? This goes beyond just knowing that she's a 28-year-old woman. This tells me that she likes casual gaming. It tells me that she's playing the game on her mobile phone when she's standing waiting in queue, like for a coffee or something like that. It also tells me that she's very impatient, which means she's willing to spend when she's losing at games. That's a rich, rich understanding about your customer, right? Think about how much you can do with the communication when you know this much about your customer. Here's another one. This one is for a different industry and different product. It's titled Technical Decision Maker, the Transformational Leader. Among other things, it includes pain points, identifying the most promising technology, getting company wide buy in for new software, finding ways to make measurable impact. Fears are making bad purchase decisions or tarnishing reputation. Information sources are peers, online search, Gartner, Forrester, Gartner CIO Leadership Forum, CIO Magazine, Fast Company Magazine. Can you see how, depending on the industry and depending on the company, you build your bio persona accordingly? The richer your bio persona, go beyond just demographic information, go beyond just age, gender, and location. Think about things like this. Think about their personalities. Think about what they like doing. Think of them as actual human beings. What do they like doing? Not just their hobbies. How do they live their day? How often a day do they have coffee? Do they make it at home? Do they have it from the dispenser? Do they go to a coffee shop? Do they like to sit and drink it? Do they like to have it on the go? Because these will tell you how they think about their life and eventually how they make their purchase decisions as well. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to look through this chart. I'm not going to explain it. This is there in your notes, incidentally. Let me know when you're done. Okay, I'm going to quickly take a minute and tell you about a case. I don't have any slides about it, but in the US, there is a retailer called Target. Target is a lot like Walmart, smaller than Walmart, but they are a multi department, multi location store chain across the US. They are present in different cities and states. They sell a lot of different products, everything from baby products to clothes to cycles, home products, household products, and so on and so forth. A couple of years ago, Target sent out communication to some of its customers, not all of them, some of its customers. It sent out a communication advertising baby products. Now, the people that it sent it out to, a lot of them had not told their families that they were pregnant. Some of them did not even realize that they were pregnant. So, how did Target know to send them communication about baby products? Any thoughts? Laya, do you think someone can Google up whether I'm pregnant or not? Google doesn't have a free repository of all information about everyone in the world. Ankit, if they did not know they were pregnant, they would not have bought a pregnancy kit. Keep thinking. Like what, Mrinalini and Devjit? No, that's not it. Yovan, keep thinking. Okay, that's an unusual thought, Pankaj, though that's not it, but I like the way you're thinking. Some of these customers did not know they were pregnant, so what are they going to search for? So here's how it happened. Target was tracking the sales of sanitary products. Sanitary products or feminine hygiene products are sanitary napkins and tampons. There are very few reasons a woman stops purchasing these. Women tend to be very loyal to their brands and their products. They also tend to buy it usually from the same store over time because this is a monthly purchase. So if a woman has stopped buying sanitary products, most likely it's because she doesn't need it. What is the most common reason a woman does not need a sanitary product? It's because she's pregnant. Yes, I agree. This became a very big case because there were people who called it intrusion of privacy. It turned out that it wasn't an intrusion of privacy because this is data available to them. Target knows what you're purchasing from them. So please think in this way about data. Don't be lazy when you're thinking about data. And when I'm saying lazy, I'm saying don't assume that you can Google everything. Data is currency. That means you can't just Google and get money, right? Any information that's free is not that valuable. If it's information that's this important, you can be sure that it's going to cost you in order to find that information. Clear? So that's an example I wanted to share with you. If you want to look up more information about this case, you can look up the Target case study. I'm going to give you a minute to leave feedback. Please come back. I have another activity for you on biopersona, which I think you'll find useful. Let me know when you're done. Thank you, Radhika. Should I go on? Okay, great. Thank you. Here's one last buyer persona I wanted to show you. Now, this one is fairly simple. It's called Sample Sally. Background is head of human resources, worked at the same company for 10 years, worked her way up from HR associate, married with two children, 10 and 8. Demographics is female, 30 to 45, dual household income, this much, suburban. Identifies a calm demeanor, probably has an assistant screening calls, asks to receive collateral mailed and printed. Keep in mind that you'll need to build multiple buyer personae, not one buyer personae, multiple ones for the different segments. Also, your buyer personae will need to be different from each other. If your buyer personae are the same, if you have three buyer personae, and all three of them sound the same, then that's basically just one gigantic segment. It's not three different segments, right? Because each segment should allow you to create an individual plan. What can you do now that you have your buyer persona? Let's take this buyer persona. This is where you get into something called drip marketing. Drip marketing can use automation. Now that you understand what automation is, and now that you have this reference point called buyer persona, you've segmented your database into three segments. Each one has its own buyer persona. And let's say, this is the buyer persona, sample Sally. I know that she's in human resources, head of HR. So I'm going to start by getting her opted in using a case study. I'm going to expose her to a case study, maybe by tweeting to her, or maybe it appears on a website that she reads often. And when she wants to read the case study, I'm going to have to ask her to sign in, or I might ask her to share her email address so I can mail her the case study. If you've ever downloaded a free ebook, you'll notice a lot of them don't let you download it right there. They ask you to fill in your email address and they mail you a link where you can download it. They don't even mail it to you directly because they don't want it to bounce. They mail you a link which you have to click on again and then you can go and open it. Are all those activities making much more sense now? First of all, they're getting your permission. Second of all, they are verifying that your email address works and that you are active in it, right? And third of all, because you've gone into your mailbox, opened their email, and clicked on the email, their mail server will now recognize you as a legitimate sender. Is all that making sense from a deliverability standpoint? So now that I've opted her in, I'm going to try and get her to engage using a blog. Maybe a week later, I'll send her an email saying you downloaded our case study last week. Here's a blog post written by the CEO in that case study. You might be interested in this. So I'm trying to draw her back into my properties. Depending on how she responds, maybe if she comes to the blog, at the bottom of my blog post, I can say you can subscribe to updates from my blog and other such case studies. Even if she doesn't respond, maybe a month later, I can send her a link saying, would you like to subscribe to further case studies like this one to the newsletter? If she reads my blog and leaves a comment, I could trigger off a free white paper for her saying, here's a white paper authored by that CEO, by that company on the 5 principles of leadership. So every time she clicks the email open, I'm sending her relevant information based on what her actions are. in parallel, depending on how she responds to the email, let's say I'm sending her a newsletter every 2 weeks, every fortnight that is, maybe a month later, I can tell her that we noticed that you found our second newsletter very interesting. Here's an audio interview, a podcast with the people mentioned in that newsletter. So, what am I doing? I'm retargeting her based on information I know about one specific piece of content. Is this model making sense? I've built this entire thing based on that one buyer persona. Also, this buyer persona might represent, let's say, 2000 people. 2000 people will do different things. They may not all read my blog. Some of them might subscribe to the newsletter, some of them might visit the blog, but because of automation, I can then trigger off different things to different people at different times. Can you see how they are coming together now? Automation and drip marketing? Clearer? So when I say customize your communication, it does not have to be difficult. Make use of the technology, but still keep it very human and personal. That brings us to the end of today's